Hi, everyone, and happy Friday. I decided I would officially try to do some kind of lecture. Know that this will be brief, and it's really just to try this out to see how it goes. I hope you're all doing well. I really hope that at some point in the future we can actually all do this together. I know that the district is currently trying to get the approval to use Zoom. The staff has been using it, and it's been awesome. A couple of reminders while I have you here. Email me, email me, email me, email me. I really want to stay in contact with all of you. The schedule that I've posted is flexible, excuse me. I tried to put a day-by-day schedule, like an odd even calendar, to kind of give you guys some stability. Let me know if you like that, if you don't like it. I really want to do whatever it takes to make this transition easier. So let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully by now you've already taken the World War I pretest, as well as have done the reading notes from the textbook. Today we are going to discuss the main causes of World War I. And MAIN is an acronym that we are going to use to kind of talk about the tension that is building before World War I actually starts. Now, I did post a note taker. You are more than welcome to print it out and take notes on that. However, you can also take notes on a separate piece of paper. The reason why this note taker is potentially helpful is there are maps of Europe on there that could be helpful as I discuss new areas. So let's go ahead and get started. So there are 4 causes of this tension that is building in Europe. M stands for militarism, A stands for alliances, I stands for imperialism, and N stands for nationalism, which spells Maine. So let's go ahead and get started with militarism. So the Industrial Revolution leads to production that has skyrocketed armaments across Europe. We start to see better technology that could be made for faster and cheaper. I'm going to kind of click through all these so that you can see it. Militaries are comprised of armies that are used really to protect and to colonize territories. We start to see navies forming, or not start, but we start to see strengthening of navies. We talked about this when we were learning about Napoleon. We also start to see this idea that a big, huge military is going to dissuade and intimidate some of your rivals from fighting. So if you already have a huge army, if you have the most powerful navy in the world, no one is going to want to fight a war with you or fight over colonies with you. So for example, the British adopted what is called a two-power standard, which means that they want to have a fleet of ships that is bigger than the next 2 countries combined. So for example, I'm just going to throw out random numbers. If France has 100 ships and Germany has 50 ships, then the UK would want to have like 200 ships. Germany sees that all of these countries around the world are getting bigger and stronger. And one of the things that starts to happen during this time period is that Germany starts to focus its power on building a military. Specifically, they want to have the largest land army in the world. All of this comes together to create what is called an arms race, which is when one country builds their military and builds their armament, and the next country feels like they need to go higher and build even more. And then that country realizes that they're now behind, so that they want to go even higher. And then this country feels like they're behind, so they want to go even bigger and higher. And as you can guess, there is no finish line. There is no, we're done, we made it, because there's always going to be a competition of who is bigger, who is badder, who is faster, who is stronger. We also see alliances start to conquer all of Europe. Now, alliances are not necessarily new. We see them throughout a lot of European history, but we start to see that these alliances are getting stronger and are getting more fortified. Let me go ahead. What I really wanted to remind you for this is that an alliance really means an attack on one means an attack on all. So if you have an alliance with a certain group of countries, if one of those countries is attacked, all of your allies are going to join in fighting for a war. So you're not really going to see a war anymore of just one country versus one country. You're going to have a lot of countries that are backing the other ones. Alliances are really important because it's a way for smaller, isolated countries to have a backing and to have support. So some of the alliances that we start to see during this time period, the first is called the Triple Alliance, and this is with Germany, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and Italy. And so here you see a map, Germany, Austria-Hungarian Empire, and Italy. Notice that it's really kind of in this center spot of Europe. The next alliance is known as the Triple Entente. And Entente is a French word, so hopefully that reminds you of who is in this Triple Alliance. We have Great Britain, France, and Russia. And so here's a map. So we see that the Triple Entente is really on the outskirts surrounding the Triple Alliance. And then we have I for imperialism. Now, all of last unit, including your anchor, was on imperialism. So hopefully this feels more of a review. We start really focusing on this idea, though, during this time, that colonies do not only provide resources, but they also provide an opportunity for competition. Now, we talked about how the Berlin Conference was put in place to try and kind of to try and lessen that tension so that Africa would be shared evenly and so that we would remain that balance of power following Napoleon. But that doesn't stay forever. We do start to see competitions form and countries wanting to have more pieces of land. Germany is a perfect example of that. The German Empire and Germany itself hasn't been united for very long at this point in history. And so they're really late to the game when all of this is occurring. So one of the things that they want to do is they want to have more colonies. And an example of them trying to get this is by trying to take over the French colony of Morocco in Africa. But it fails. Germany is not successful and does not take over Morocco. This obviously causes tension between France and Germany as their allies, as many are looking to see whether Germany is going to continue and what this might eventually lead to. On top of that, other weak empires during this time are not really able to get as many colonies. For example, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire does not have, sorry, Mr. Rowe is calling me. Excuse me, what was I saying? Oh, so the Austrian-Hungarian Empire does not have as many colonies, and like Germany, they kind of feel left out of taking a piece of different territories. And then another one of the biggest, weakest empires of this time is the Ottoman Empire. Many call it the sick man of Europe because for decades now, the Ottoman Empire has been declining in military power and economic strength. And a lot of Europeans are looking at it, seeing that it's weak and seeing that it can be taken advantage of. So in this map, you can really see what countries are gaining strength and what countries are losing power. So we see, for example, that the British in pink right here have massive amounts of territory across the globe. We see the French, this kind of lime green, taking huge parts of Africa as well as Indochina. And we start to see Germany, where are you? This orangey color, trying to take more pieces for itself. Here's Germany up there, but not being as successful. And then lastly, N is for nationalism. So nationalism is really this extreme national pride. And the Industrial Revolution and imperialism really promote this idea of nationalism. If you remember, we talked about things like the white man's burden and this idea that the Industrial Revolution happened in Europe first because they felt that they were the superior race. We also see countries feeling like they had a duty to imperialize because of this superiority. And because of this feeling that everyone is a winner, however, you probably can already tell that not everyone can be a winner, and there are some issues that start to happen. For example, one of the issues that occurs is a rise in jingoism. And jingoism is an extreme form of nationalism. When countries feel that they are so superior and so strong that they push for aggressive foreign policy and actually advocate for the use of violence and threats and actual force. Countries like Germany and Italy during this time period do start to have jingoistic policies, but they're not alone. Britain has a huge rise in nationalism during this time as well, especially since they have the most powerful navy, the most land when it comes to their empire. So you see this huge spike in that wave. Songs, poems, and plays are created around the country, as well as curriculum in schools that promote this idea that their country is the best. So here is an example that we start to see. This is a song of hate against England that was written in Germany. And here is a translation. Hate by the water and hate by land, hate of the head and hate of the hand, hate of the hammer and hate of the crown. We love as one, we hate as one, we have but one foe, England. So again, in this song, you can see this extreme form of nationalism, right? Not only feeling like your country is the best, but therefore all the other countries must be the worst. And at this time, Germany and England already had a really tumultuous and intense relationship because of this type of jingoism that appeared. And I want to remind you that nationalism can be a unifying force and a disunifying force. So in places like France, Italy, and Germany, you start to see nationalism as a unifying force, bringing people together, especially with Italy and Germany. These countries are relatively new countries. Before being Italy and before being Germany, they were broken up into much smaller tribes, if you will. And it isn't until they become official nations that are all unified under one border and one government that we start to see this nationalism growing. However, it can also work as a dividing force, as seen in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. There's such a diverse population in this area, and instead of seeing themselves as Austrian Hungarians, they start to see themselves within their smaller ethnic groups as Serbs and Czechs and Slovaks and Poles, instead of that like one unifying. So the way that I can maybe describe it is that we in America, we tend to view each other as Americans. We see each other under that heading. However, nationalism as a disunifying force would be if instead of seeing ourselves as Americans, we start to see each other as like Californians versus New Yorkers or Californians versus Mississippians, instead of seeing us all under one nationality. Again, another example of this is in Russia. Because Russia is such a diverse area, we start to see a lot of conflicts that arise between different ethnic groups within their borders. So all of this tension, the militarism, the alliances, the imperialism, the nationalism, all start to grow and are kind of creating more and more pressure in Europe until it's going to snap. Excuse me. And where this is going to snap is in an area known as the Balkans. This is the Balkans over here. The Balkans become known as the powder keg of Europe. A powder keg is like gunpowder. And so a powder keg on its own is not necessarily dangerous. However, once that powder keg is ignited with the tiniest little spark, it will explode. And that's exactly what happens with World War I and the Balkans. So the Balkans are controlled by the Ottomans during most of the 1700s. And the Balkans, however, over here, fight really long and hard to gain their independence because they do not want to be a part of the Ottoman Empire. Specifically, the Greece and Serbia are able to gain their independence. Bulgaria, Romania, and Montenegro in the 1900s also eventually gained some independence. All of this helps weaken the Ottoman Empire. Remember, we called it the sick man of Europe. So as the Ottoman Empire is losing more of its power and its territory, it's getting sicker and sicker. This region over here is extremely diverse. People don't see themselves under one nationality. We saw a lot of different ethnic groups pop up. So I want you to think about what main reason is or are illustrated here. I'm not going to tell you the answer, but if you don't know, shoot me an email. So some background information that I wanted to clarify before we get into really what is called the spark is that the Austrian-Hungarian Empire had annexed Bosnia over here. To annex means to like bring in and take in as one of its own. So Bosnia is now a part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. But Serbia over here saw Bosnia as a part of its own people. And Serbia actually wanted all of the Slavic people, which are an ethnic group, to be united as one. So the fact that part of the Slavic people over here, Bosnia, is a part of Austrian-Hungarian Empire really upsets the Serbians. And this leads to a lot of resentment in Serbia as well as in other Slavic countries against the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So that background information is really important when understanding that spark that happens on June 28th, 1914. So Otto von Bismarck once said that one day the Great European War will come out of some damned foolish thing in the Balkans, and he is absolutely right. So Otto von Bismarck was a German diplomat, and he's the one that really sees the Balkans as a powder keg of Europe. He sees that there's all this tension, that there's all this drama, and one day, one small action, one small little spark will create a great European war. Now, he's right. However, he passes away before he actually ever gets to see his prediction come true. So, enter Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Archduke Franz Ferdinand is the nephew of the emperor of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, Franz Josef. So, Archduke Franz Ferdinand is a part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Okay. He decides that he is going to go to the newly annexed Bosnia, and he's going to inspect the troops, take a look. In fact, he's going to have like a little bit of a parade, like get to see his new people. And you can guess that this is not really welcomed, especially since he has decided to do this inspection on the anniversary of Serbia's defeat. So I'm going to take a couple steps back. He specifically picks a date that he knows, at least this is, what is predicted or guessed, is that Archduke Franz Ferdinand goes to Bosnia on a specific day that he knows is going to be an insult to the Serbians. So already the Serbians are super frustrated with the fact that Archduke Franz Ferdinand is going to go to Bosnia because, again, they don't think that he should go there. They don't think that our Austrian-Hungarian Empire should have any control over Bosnia. So the fact that he picks a day that's so cherished to the Serbians really feels like, even bigger of an insult. So Archduke Franz Ferdinand goes, he gets in this car right over here with his wife, and this is when the Black Hand decides that they need to take matters into their own hands. This is a, excuse me, this is a ultra-nationalist group of Serbians, and they decide that they are going to send 6 assassins to Sarajevo to assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Their first assassination attempt is as the car is driving down the road. They throw a bomb at Franz Ferdinand's open car. However, it rolls off the car and actually just injures some nearby soldiers. So in other words, the assassination attempt is a total failure. It doesn't actually work. Franz Ferdinand and his wife and the driver get away. The Black Hand decides that they are going to give up on this assassination attempt. It didn't work. But it's not quite done just yet. Enter Gavrilo Princip. He was a 19-year-old member of the Black Hand who, after finding that the plan is defeated, he's like really bummed. So he's like, I'm going to go grab a sandwich. And he's eating a sandwich. And at that exact same time he's eating the sandwich, like, oh man, our assassination attempt didn't work. So bummed. A car turns the corner and he sees that it's Archduke Franz Ferdinand in the car. And so he's like, wait, what? This is like perfect timing. He drops his sandwich, he goes to the car. At this point in time, the driver of the car realizes, uh-oh, I've gone down the wrong road and I shouldn't be here. So he decides to kind of like back up the car, but the car stalls. And Gavrilo Princip is like, this is unbelievably perfect. And he ends up shooting Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. And the story goes that Archduke Franz Ferdinand looked down at his wife, and before he was able to, before she died and before he died, he looked at her and he said, stay alive for the children, because they had kids, which is a really heartbreaking final words, if you ask me. So again, he shoots Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife while the car is stopped, and they both die, and Princip is arrested. After this point in time, everyone doesn't really know what to do, right? This Archduke Franz Ferdinand has been arrested. People know this is bad. People understand that the Balkans are a really tense area already. And then we see enter Germany. On July 6, 1914, 8 days after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, Germany offers their ally, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, a blank check. What I mean by that is they basically say, anything you need, we will support you. If you need weapons, you will get weapons. If you need loans, you will get loans. If you need military advisors, you will get military advisors. Basically saying, if you go to war, we're in. We will have your back. If you want to go to war with Serbia, we're your people. We are going to help you. And with this support, Austria decides that they are going to make some demands to Serbia. And this is when they issue their ultimatum. On July 23rd, 1914, they issue an ultimatum to Serbia that has 3 main demands. 1, they have to open their government to let the Austrian-Hungarians investigate the assassination. They have to suppress and end all anti-Austrian propaganda, and they have to end all terrorist groups within its borders. And this is pretty extreme, right? They're pretty much saying that we're going to come in, investigate for ourselves, take control, and you have all of this to do, and you must answer within 48 hours. Now, Austria-Hungarians are pretty cocky at this point. They know they have Germany that's going to support them. And at this point in time, Germany's army is crazy strong. And Serbia is a really small country. However, one thing that you need to know about Serbia is that one of Serbia's allies is, in fact, Russia. So Serbia refuses the ultimatum. And they know that they have Russia as their ally that will back them up, even if they end up going into war. And so on July 28th, Austria declares war on Serbia. And Austria and Germany hope they can quickly just like go into Serbia, demolish Serbia before Russia can even prepare for war. So we're going to pause right here. And so this is really like the spark we're starting. Other nations haven't totally joined into World War I. But what I want you to do now is, if you printed the map, I want you to color in the two alliances that are on the back of the note taker, the Triple Alliance as well as the Triple Entente. And then I want you to answer the question that is on the discussion board. Now, the due date, not really a due date, is by March 27th, but I would highly suggest you just try and do it as soon as possible. It's a really basic question. I just want you to answer which of the four main causes do you think is the most significant when thinking about the start of World War I? And then I want you to respond to somebody else's post. I hope this helped. Again, this was my first time. I promise I will get better at it. And for next week, just so that you know, I'm going to be posting some other videos about the start of World War I so that you can have a really strong and in-depth understanding about what really started this conflict. I hope this helped. I hope you're all well. I really miss everyone, and I'll see you soon. Bye.